Hello everyone, I'm going to get straight into the headlines for this week as we have a packed show. We have Scotty.inc, what is it? And has Matt already done it? We have Google Ultra, we've got some feedback this week. Anthropic's Rick Rubin pivot. Rick Caruso praises Aussie AI Archistar on Fox News. SpaceX's Mars update. Agentic workflows, the how-tos. China's 100-mile freeway without humans. Autonomous bulldozers out of San Francisco. Is it too little too late? Remote workers are now entering the physical workspace. Sam Altman releases news live again while we're on the show. And white collar jobs, is there an opportunity to level up or are they under threat? What's been happening?
Mate, I have been heads down back in Melbourne at the moment, heading back over to Austin, well, actually via LA and Vegas next week for a few conferences, but heads down. It's been a big couple of weeks. I'm very interested to hear about Scotty.inc. What's happening with the personal brand, mate?
So, look, this is going to get some mixed reception. Some people might think I'm starting to lose my mind, but a little bit inspired by Johnny Ive getting acquired by OpenAI a couple of weeks ago for $6 billion, just basically because his name's Johnny Ive. And I thought, you know, he planted the seed a long time ago that he was just Johnny. There's also Sam, there's Elon, there's Zuck. Some of the older listeners might think of Oprah and Madonna. And in no way am I saying I'm in these people's league, but I just think long term, everyone calls me Scotty. You'd never heard called me Scott on this podcast before, so I'm leaning into Scotty. And then I thought I better get a personal website just so for all our different distribution, different businesses we have, there's just one platform if people are interested in knowing my thoughts on something. So I've gone ahead and purchased Scotty.inc as the domain to sort of publish what we're doing here. And then had to go get all the other social media profiles. But in doing so and bringing it up with you, is there a whisper that maybe you're years ahead of me in this space and potentially have gone in a similar direction yourself?
Well, it's funny. When I was at school, a mate and I became obsessed with starting a business. Our initial business was called Money Enterprises.ltd. Shout out to Nick Lindsay and a throwback to Money Enterprise. We never actually did anything with that. I think we might have got some business cards. But no, everyone called me Pez back at school. And so Pez stuck around to the workplace. So all my handles are pez.ltd for limited. I probably should have gone Inc. I checked the pez.inc now. It's above $3,000. So I don't think I'll be purchasing that. But, you know, the whole domain buying thing, it's fun, isn't it? I actually used to have a bit of a dirty habit of going out and getting drunk and purchasing domains. So sometimes if I had a big night, I'd wake
domains.
up.
You said domains. Thank God. I was wondering what your dirty habit of going out and getting drunk was. Purchasing domains. Okay, thank God we landed there.
Yeah, well, that's just really consolidating my status as the nerd on the show. But yeah, purchasing domains when I was drunk, and I would wake up and be like, what the hell is this? And it would often be like, I purchased it for a friend. And probably the best one that I got was I was chatting with a mate's dad who's into his sailing, and he was they were trying to name their new boat. And so I purchased for him the domain because he wanted this boat to be really fast, usainboat.com. So that's the name of the boat, and I sold it to him on the spot.
Mate, this is like some really early entrepreneurial stories from you that we're getting at here. Money Enterprises. Just a fun fact as well with Nick Lindsay. I didn't know you too much. I played footy with him, and so it wasn't much on the footy field. Sorry, Nick. So he must have been much more an entrepreneur, concentrating on his entrepreneurial adventures with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the other stuff that we've been up to this week. I've obviously had my first week with Google Ultra.
Yeah, so what's Google Ultra?
And so Google Ultra is, we mentioned it last week, where they basically plugging Gemini into their whole ecosystem, of which I still don't have like 80% of their products, but you know, I purchase things after conferences, and so purchase the $300-$400 a month or whatever I'm paying, ridiculous, and a little bit disappointed as potentially the only customer, silly enough, because Google's been free for 20 years. Then they go, it. Let's just charge people $400 and like I sign up to Google Ultra. So I was expecting maybe a Larry or Sergey private message, Scotty, welcome to the ecosystem. You're the first Ultra customer. So like what you would have done, like probably what you did with us back in the day when we signed up to Build Pass. But no feedback from Larry or Sergey. Some mild use of Ultra this week. If we were talking dollars per prompt at the moment, I'm probably paying $8 to $10 per prompt. So looking for some extra use on Google Ultra, not writing off the product just yet. I'm sure it's great. If anyone else is on Google Ultra, please jump in the comments and let us know how you're using it, because I need to get some bang for buck.
Maybe you've just got so many subscriptions that you actually don't physically have enough prompts in you to get the cost per prompt down across all the products that you're paying for. So remember our talk about tokens. You've got a limit of tokens that you can produce, and maybe that's the bottleneck here.
Well, now that you say that, actually, it's funny. I saw someone the other day saying the new, like, Elon, what have you done this week, is actually to your people that work around you. How many prompts have you done this week? Or show me your prompts, just so people can tell you that they're actually leveraging AI. So you might be right. I'm at like a prompt overload.
Yeah,
there's only so many prompts a man can give. Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna try and leverage that tool more moving forward. Just another thing, mate, that I've picked up on as we were trying to build our social media, growth dashboard for the pod. We got some interesting data out of YouTube, and I need to recheck this. 100% male audience, Matt. Now I thought maybe 90, 92. Now you got to remember, we are both married. So what's going on at home with you and I?
I don't know. We're talking about too much Elon. I don't know what it is. But that's we need to fix that. I think we need to at least go for 20% female. So if there's any advice for how two white dudes talking about AI and tech and business can better attract the female audience, we're very open to that.
And for the blokes out there who are listening, pass it on to your wife.
Please.
Say you should look at this new show that I'm having you listen to.
Please do. Yeah, obviously our wives aren't listening, but hopefully there are some females out there that are interested in tech and AI. I know a few, so I'll be certainly passing it on to them.
Fantastic. The famous Limitless pendant that I bought that went missing. The CEO's come out and he's done, I suppose, the Limitless almost Temu version of like the Nvidia sort of summit, which I think was him standing and talking to, a bunch of potential investors and people and doing a bit of a product launch release. And he was talking about all the valuable things that Limitless is going to bring to you. So, generate your shopping list, remember everything from the day. He even said, make you a better husband and father. Once again, if you're a man, you probably should have been speaking to both audiences like us. And then he sort of two big flaws in the Limitless showcase. One was he brought up OpenAI, and he brought up that little clip of Sam Altman and acquiring Johnny Ive and the fact that they're going to probably create a wearable. So he's potentially brought up his own demise in the middle of the presentation and still did not mention anything about Find My. So some great ideas there, but I don't know who's consulting him, but what are your thoughts with him?
Yeah, just tell him to stick to the basics. I think it's good that he addressed the elephant in the room. If I was sitting there listening to the Limitless CEO, the first question would be like, how are you going to compete against OpenAI when they've just dropped it? So good on him for getting ahead of it. But without the equivalent of Find My, he's pretty screwed.
And what else is happening in the VC world out there?
We all see on X people taking the piss out of some VCs. It's very much a bit of a bro culture. Lots of Patagonia vest wearing and I guess virtue signaling. But I saw a very funny VC sort of, I guess it's satire. I'll read the full thing out now. We can cut it if we go over. But I just thought it was very funny. A VC taking the piss out of himself. So the post goes, my son tiptoed into the kitchen during my third Zoom call of the day. He knows not to interrupt when I'm fundraising, but he looked up at me and said, "Dad, will you be at my school play tonight?" I muted the call with a sigh, swiveled toward him, and opened my iPad. "Son," I said gently, "let me show you something better than a third-grade production of The Jungle Book." I pulled up the pitch deck of a pre-revenue startup I just led at a 95 mil valuation. "See this TAM? See this retention curve? That's what legacy looks like." His eyes welled with tears. Whether it was pride or confusion, I'll never know. But he nodded. He understood. This is the cost of deploying capital at scale. Just, I couldn't stop laughing. It was very good, and there's some very good comments in there as well.
It is very good because it just seems, I think we've spoken about that there's very little going on in the aspirational space of technology that actually founders, CEOs, VCs talking about the mix of family and having a family and also, having the moonshot and, trying to create a unicorn business or something. And that's almost the summary of it. It's just, that's it. That's the apex of it, of just, there's no time for anything except for like optimizing, getting up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, cold plunging, doing 1,000 hours of work, going home, sleeping in your 8-hour sleep bed, then doing it again.
Yeah.
There's not much room for anything else. So very good. I like that bit of comedy.
Yeah. It's it was a good way to sort of take the piss out of it. But like you say, it's good that they're at least talking about that fact that that is a lot of the sort of VC culture that's out there and the startup culture. And I think there needs to be more chat about the balance.
Absolutely. Now, mate, let's get into AI news.
Big docket.
Let's kick it off with Perplexity, because there was some rumors that the Google recent conference was basically going to kill them. And what we see often in this space is, in general, I feel like people have these releases. I don't know what cadence they're on. Maybe it's fortnightly or monthly, but there's all the headlines are always like, this company kills that company. And then
Clickbait.
That company then comes up with something else. So this isn't a like a one horse race, a winner take all on everything. This is a full new, industry, a full new technological revolution. There's not just going to be one company. So Perplexity, people thought that maybe they were falling a bit behind. What are they up to?
Yeah, so just a reminder, if people don't know what Perplexity is, it's essentially an AI tool that wraps other models so that they don't have their own LLM. They are at the application layer, and they started off as sort of like a web browser that used AI. So you could prompt it just like you would ChatGPT, but instead of just getting a text answer back, it was more of a web browsing experience. They would share links with you that you could then go and link off to, images. So they did really well at the start, but then kind of fell into that bucket of people just saying, well, you're just an AI wrapper and you're going to be dead when OpenAI does this and when Google does this. And, I think that's a fair comment, but they have proven to keep on shipping at a rate ahead of the other guys. And there's some pretty cool announcements from Perplexity. So one of them is they are getting put into Samsung, I believe. So as the default model, or essentially the Siri-like version, if you compare it to the iPhone, into Samsung. So that's a big one. They have integrated with WhatsApp. They've come out with Perplexity Labs as well, which is like Perplexity on steroids. Instead of just the web browser, it does a bunch of things for you. So a bit more agentic, as we'd say. And some really cool examples that we're seeing. One of them that we can link to is someone said, I want to find a hotel in Amsterdam with a serious gym, walkable to conference venues under €300 a night. And it went out, looked at 847 hotels and all the photos, found the gym, found the right location, and came back to them. And so just, a really good example of probably doing a way better job than, say, ChatGPT or Notebook.LM or Gemini would have done, but just by leveraging their models. So these guys seem to be shipping at a rate that is pretty impressive. It's cool to see how fast they're coming out with updates.
Yeah, I think the answer is, if you just chill, there's probably a favorite company of yours that's going to update itself every month. One of the other little hacks is make sure that you're always having a look and updating your app in the App Store, because that usually releases, if it's a Grok or a Perplexity, you then suddenly get access. You used to be annoyingly updating your app, I remember, over like the last 10 years, and it would be like a bug fix. And then somehow like there's some new privacy policy as well. But now it just seems like if you're updating your app every month or two, you've probably got some outrageous new thing that you can use, a new tool. So well done to the Perplexity team. The next bit of news we have is from my man in politics, Rick Caruso, over in LA, who's really trying to make a difference in the rebuild of LA and cut through all the politics and the red tape and just help people get back on their feet over there. And the sort of the greatest, money-wise, greatest residential home disaster ever. So he has gone on Fox News, and the reason why I wanted to talk about it today is we mentioned Archistar, the Aussie AI company that deals with sort of planning and design for homes, started in Australia, who've gone international. And they've partnered with Steadfast LA, which is Rick Caruso's non-for-profit, to help rebuild. And it was just cool seeing him. We'll play the clip in the show just of him mentioning that basically the biggest problem that was going to stop us getting in the way of rebuilding these people's homes is red tape. And we've partnered with an Aussie AI company to fast track that.
What you've been trying to do to help these homeowners, which hopes to accelerate the rebuilding for a lot of these people. What are you doing right now, and what's the AI component to this? We found that very interesting.
So Steadfast LA is a nonprofit. We've got the best and the brightest around the table rolling up their sleeves, solving problems. And one of them is, how do you cut through the permitting process? LA can take 6 to 8 months to go through plan check. 2 companies came together, led by a guy named Mike Hopkins of Amazon, developed an AI model working with a company out of Australia. We've delivered it to the city. We've delivered it to the county.
That's just such a great thing for Aussie AI companies like yourself and everyone, just to see someone with he's a political heavyweight. He'd be in the top 10 most powerful political personnel in the US at the moment. And he's sitting out there on Fox News talking about Aussie AI startups fixing the problem in LA.
It's so good seeing some Aussie companies punching above their weight over in the US. We love to see it.
And mate, the next one for the AI news, quickly becoming my favorite app, Notebook LM, bring them up every week. Last week, we talked about the workflow of setting up different deep research LLMs while you go to sleep, because sometimes they can take 10 minutes to go through a deep research, or sometimes it can take a few hours, like say if you're using Gemini Pro. Any topic, any book, anything you want to learn, set it off, go to sleep in the morning, grab all the PDFs and drop them into Notebook LM, create a podcast, put it on, listen on your way to work, get into work and do something about it. To me, that's probably the best workflow that's come out of AI so far for me over the last couple of years. And then this morning, they've just announced that you can now share your Notebook LM library publicly. So in theory, whatever you produce in this app now, you can share with your coworkers and say, oh, look, here's a pod, or here's a summary of this topic, or I've been working on something overnight, and here's the output. Here's what I want you to concentrate on today. Have a listen to this 10-minute pod and then get stuck into it. Or you can make it public. So it's almost like a publishing platform. Like if you think of it like Substack, you can pretty much convey yourself to be a pretty intelligent human being publicly. So one of the things that I did on the weekend was we're looking at construction more in a manufacturing lens now. And I personally feel like I know almost everything about building a luxury home, but I know very, very little about manufacturing. And if you're thinking the future of construction is in manufacturing and a model close to manufacturing, you want to take a deep dive on manufacturing. So what I did was I got ChatGPT and Gemini to recommend the top 10 manufacturing principles books, and then diluted that into like the top 2 or 3. Then I downloaded the ebook like PDF, put that in, combined them all, put them into Notebook LM, got Notebook LM to summarize it, and then I made it adjust to the workflow of my business and all the information about Elysium, and it just condensed this huge topic, all these amazing books, into something specifically made for me and my adoption of those books, which might have saved me weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And on a slight tangent, what I love about this and other AI tools, we've talked about having like a bias to action before. I think the people who were successful maybe 10, 15 years ago, a lot of it was in knowledge and how smart you were, what degree you had, and that could make you successful. But now that is no longer the thing. It's really this new world is rewarding those who are willing to take action and are curious and want to do things like, so just to your example with manufacturing, you don't have to go out there and be the manufacturing expert. You just have to have the will to go and do it and just say, I want to do this. I'm going to learn about it. All of the tools are there. You've still got to have the desire to do it, to get out of bed and want to build these notebooks and create podcasts and listen to them. But that's what I love. It's almost like a leveling of the playing field. And that if you are willing to put in the hard work and you are curious, all of a sudden grand ideas are only a few prompts away. So a bit of a tangent on the AI news, but that's just what you reminded me of.
And I think you've got some notes here around, is it the A16 guys talking about sort of the death of research in general?
Yeah. So A16Z came out with basically a post that said market research is a $140 billion industry, but most of the spend still goes to human surveys, panels, and agencies. For years, software was around the era. Now AI is flipping the model on its head. So it is in a similar vein. It's saying that there are these massive markets out there where people who are specialists in certain areas are still getting paid. Like think of, we've talked about the consultants before, the BCGs and the McKinseys who get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do research and to go deliver presentations. That spend isn't necessarily going to reduce. It's just going to be shifted into AI products. If someone was willing to pay 500 grand for that result, are they still now willing to pay 500 grand, but to get an AI tool that's going to do it, that is going to be probably 100 times more detailed, 100 times higher quality? I think the answer is yes. And so these markets are still there. But what A16Z is saying, and they are famous, and sorry, A16, for those who don't know, A16Z is a very famous VC firm founded by Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen. Mark Andreessen being the guy who essentially invented the web browser. A16Z, I think it's short for Andreessen Horowitz, the 16 in the middle, representing the letters between the first A and the last Z.
Yep.
They are famous for saying that the quote, software is eating the world, back maybe, again, probably 15 years ago. And now they've got this prediction that AI is flipping the service model on its head. All of the things that we were paying for that were predominantly services done by humans, is that spend going to be shifted into AI? A bit of a scary thought, but obviously a massive opportunity for anyone working in the AI space.
Yeah, I think the one to add to it is I think universities are in big trouble. I've even talking to, some of the tech guys that I'm working with that are still in the universities or working around the universities. I just said to them like, okay, so everything that we know around the last 2 months in AI, all the developments, how do you teach a university subject about that? Like, how often are you updating the curriculum? Like, how old's this course? How old's the software engineering course? How old's the information technology course? And what are you talking about here? And the answer was like, we're talking about none of it. And I just think some of the fees that these universities have been charging, sort of like the learning industrial complex has gotten so big and bloated because governments, fund it, and then they write off student debt, and countries like the US and Australia and England, it's a big export education. So there's all these government subsidies, and I just think, with deep research, what am I getting back? I'm getting it customized, and I'm learning things that I imagine years ago you'd think I have to go to university and I have to go do a subject on this, or I have to go do my MBA. You could prompt yourself an MBA and then and get it to teach you, say, ask it every subject that there is in the Harvard Business School MBA, and then go deep research on that topic, grab all the papers, all the case studies, and then once again, put them into a notebook LM and then digest it how you want to digest it. One case study at a time via a podcast, deliver yourself. You could create your own test or your own exam. And the way that something like 70 to 80% of learning is actually when you teach someone else. That's when you hold on to it. And then you could find that, well, I'm now going to teach someone what I've just learned. And that, I just think, I'm just not sure, and you can see it already in Silicon Valley, that most of the startups are being built by university dropouts.
Yeah. And
that people like Peter Thiel with Founders Funds, they're trying to get people out of high school saying, don't even go to university. You're just going to get brainwashed, and, you're going to end up, protesting every second week. Just come here and we'll teach you everything you need to know about starting a company.
Totally. if I was running a university, what I would be doing is leaning into the community aspect. So creating physical places for people to connect. Just don't even worry about the curriculum anymore. University almost becomes like a club or an area that you can go to collab, because in this new world, people are going to be craving more human connection. So we're still humans, and AI, I think, is going to only amplify that if we're outsourcing a bunch of our knowledge work to AI. We're going to be craving more human connection. So I think that's the only way that they can save themselves. Use the infrastructure and the land that they've got to create communities where people can hang out, and they almost create like their own little university courses using AI within that infrastructure. Because I've had this view for a long time. I spent too long at uni. I was there for 7 or 8 years, changing between degrees and just not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And I look back on that, I say a lot of that content was not great. I went there to get the paper, and I went there to have that connection with other people. It was fun. And I think they really need to lean into that community and that human aspect rather than just the content.
Yeah, even like the stuff I've done in the US in the short form education, some of these Ivy League, everything I've gotten out of it is the network of the people that I went there and met. Gives me an idea, actually. Maybe we need the little B2S pod community of just a bunch of entrepreneurs and techies just getting together and sharing insight and tools. So we might have a look at that with some of our community engagement, because it is cool to hang out with like-minded people, trialing tools, giving each other feedback, saying don't worry about it. You're sort of almost delegating within a community potentially because there's just too much news. There's too many tools to try. If you can create it little Reddit communities and then maybe meet up once a month, I think we might see some more of that, is where some like-minded people just want to get together, whether it's in Melbourne, San Francisco, Austin, wherever it is. Find people with your interest and meet them in person once a month, and then have an online community.
100%. In-person events augmented by online. It's the way to go.
Mate, one of the things that we mentioned already on this show, manufacturing, I think manufacturing is going to become sexy again. And it's all led by what I think is my man Jensen in terms of them going full steam into creating the compute and robotic ecosystem that will allow for automation in factories. Whatever happens in China, it suddenly just doesn't get talked about around the world. So the Chinese have been doing it forever and they're way out in front. But then obviously with like things like Tesla and SpaceX, Elon's, probably the best manufacturer on the planet. And I suppose the big news from this week is the SpaceX launch of the news, basically saying that they're going to be making Starships, which are like the size of high rises. They're going to be making them at a rate more than Boeing and Airbus in terms of planes. And to do that, the size of their Gigabay that they're building in Texas on Starbase is basically like a city. So more on that Chinese type scale. But I think with the lack of human labor required within manufacturing moving forward, that there's going to be a bunch of people in software that have had these legacy moats. And I think now to get a proper moat, you're going to need to be part of a full stack that includes hardware and or manufacturing. Like your software is going to have to plug into something bigger than itself and help generate more revenue as part of a physical AI solution. And it just seems like Tesla and SpaceX are at the front of that in the US, and China's got Huawei and others that are vertically integrated. But yeah, what are your thoughts in general on manufacturing, and then maybe some of this news?
Yeah, I agree. It's becoming sexy again. The integration of AI into manufacturing and making the ability to make it autonomous has been a massive unlock. And it is solving one of the biggest issues that we have it's the shortage of labor. Like we talk about it in construction all the time. That is in all of our customers who are builders, the predominant thing that I hear is not that there's not enough work out there. It's that we are constrained by labor. We can't take on more work because we are worried that we will not be able to find the labor. And it's really hard to replace labor out in an open construction site. We've talked about the improvements that are happening there, but inside of manufacturing, you have a controlled environment, and it's like a big science experiment. And you're right, Elon he would probably be the best in the world alongside Jensen at it, and maybe some of the Chinese companies. And so when he announces Gigabay, which is going to be producing 1,000 Starships a year, people no longer take the piss out of him. It's like I think a few years ago, people would be like, you know what, you're BSing again. And he did do a lot of that. He promised things that he didn't deliver on, but he is really starting to deliver now. Like when he mentioned that he was going to be delivering Teslas autonomously from the factory to your home in Austin when you ordered one, he said by the end of the year. That apparently is happening this month. Like they're actually trialing it now. So it's like he's probably learned to rein in what he says a bit, mentions things as he's going to do them and he's delivering. And so when he says that he's building a couple of factories that are going to be the biggest factories in the world, one in Texas, one in Florida, that's going to produce 1,000 Starships a year, I think everyone's like, yeah, he's going to do it. And like, he's not anymore. This is happening. So it's really exciting. And if this is the sort of infrastructure that's going to get us to Mars, that's also a pretty bold thing to be thinking about.
The one thing I like, and we do get accused of over talking with him, but what it allows me to do is with this Mars thing, it allows me for everything I bring up that's hard at work. I go, guys, they're going to Mars. Like, we can solve this little API issue, or we can build this little automation, or we should be able to get this concrete deal done. Like, we can do it. They're going to Mars out there if we step outside and we look. And so I think there's something in those statements that he says in being aspirational and not just looking at solving all these little problems at work, as having some big like North Star. Because it drags everyone along, even if you don't get there. And then when the best in the world do it, it makes space for people like you and I to just up our game and then have that message with our teams at work and say, hey, this is what's going on out there. Our dream, or yours, is, being the number one operating system for construction sites. It's a reasonable dream, and it's gettable. So I just think those sort of frontier people that push the boundaries, they're perfect for us because it allows you to, also push yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It sets the standard, and it's not trying to say that either of our business is going to be that, but it shows what's possible, and so it allows us to raise the bar. One final one that I had for some AI news before we can move on. I noticed this was a bit of a small announcement, and it might have gone under the radar, but Google has dropped something that they call Google AI Edge. And what this is it's a new framework for deploying AI onto local devices. So what that essentially means is, and just quick recap on how something like, say, ChatGPT works on your phone, is there's a model that's sitting on OpenAI's servers somewhere that's got thousands and thousands of Nvidia chips running these models and costing billions of dollars a day. And so we send the request off over the internet to OpenAI. It runs it on the model, then it comes back. What there's a lot of talk on is how can we get the models small enough and efficient enough such that the whole model can actually fit on your phone and you don't have to send it over the internet to work. And so the model's getting better, but they've also deployed a framework that allows you to really easily deploy these models onto your phone and to test them on your phone. So what I think this is going to unlock, and what we will see, is basically every mobile app soon will have a little AI model running on the phone, whether that's a voice to text model, whether that's something that gives you quick insights, or it allows you to query your data. And all of our apps now should just be becoming AI first, and they should be really fast, and they shouldn't require you to and they'll become faster too. Like, won't need to send it over the internet to this massive model and coming back. It'll just be immediate, and it'll unlock things like being able to talk to your phone and your different apps. So a bit of an announcement that went under the edge because it's a bit techy and it's not sort of necessarily for the consumer. But I think as consumers in the long term, we're going to start seeing a lot better AI deployment into all of the apps that we use.
Yeah, I mean, Edge in general, bring back the server. So I think, now servers used to be these big rooms, and very complex things, and you had to get the IT guy in every day just to play with it, to build out an intranet at work or something. And I think we're going to see it come back, because what everyone's realizing is that, hold on, how many people do I want to have to know everything about me? Like, if I'm going to wear a wearable that's listening to me all day, where do I want that information going? And then, so that's going to be on your device. Anything that any device that can say to you, we can run models locally without the internet, that's going to be it's going to be a big selling point. So look out for that with Apple and Google. And then I mentioned last week, in the home, I think, when we're talking about autonomous homes and intelligent homes, where the two things that are going to be critical at energy generation and capture, and then edge data collection and maintenance. So I just think privacy is the ultimate luxury. And Apple's been fantastic, I think, at maintaining privacy. They seem to be really principled around it. I'm not sure the other, like OpenAI and stuff like that, and Microsoft, I'm not sure they've got the same, especially not Meta. If you type something into WhatsApp, it's coming up on an ad in Instagram in 10 seconds. But on the edge means privacy. And through all of this, privacy and security are going to be big pain points and big selling points. So, yeah, and if once again, giving Nvidia a plug, if you watch any of their conferences, some of the edge compute that they're bringing forward that's affordable and has huge capacity, I think Nvidia as well. So, yeah, 100% edge AI. Watch this space on the edge. You'll hear it a lot. And if you're worried about privacy, then that's your unlock. If you're not jumping into AI because of privacy, then things not going off to the cloud is going to give you comfort. Let's switch gears into Tool of the Week. I must admit, although I've gone full Stalin on this and made the name be Tool of the Week, and we got rid of Matt's hacks, 90% of them are yours. So apologies about that.
Who's the tool now, Scotty?
Yeah, exactly. I did say that potentially I'm the Tool of the Week. Not in a good way. But mate, take us through I think in general, agents, agentic workflows, things that people are hearing, automating workflows, agents, the difference between agents and LLMs, what you're seeing, and maybe a bit of a deep dive on what it is. And if the average person can start thinking about how they can automate a workflow.
Yeah. Okay. So quick high level, we might have talked about it before, go over it again. There's kind of a difference between just LLMs in general. So what we talk to, what an AI workflow is, and then what an AI agent is. So the very high level is if you're talking to ChatGPT, having a conversation, you're having a conversation with the LLM, you're directing it. You are asking a question or saying something, it's coming back to you with a response. What an AI workflow is, it's actually setting up some steps. It's saying, okay, I actually want one AI to do this, then it's going to go to the next AI and do this. And so an example might be, I want an AI to look in my email inbox. I want it to find certain types of emails and draft a response for me and have them ready for me to send off. What an AI agent is by definition is an AI where you can give it a prompt or an objective, and it doesn't have a set structure that it follows. There's no workflow that you've defined. You are basically saying, this is what I'm going to do. And the AI uses its own brain, or the LLM, to work out what the next steps are. It still has guidance from you, and it will know where to come to you for more information. But that's what an AI agent is. And that's the really exciting part of AI at the moment is how can we get these agents to start thinking on our behalf and doing things for us. One of the patterns that I'm noticing is a lot of people are going out on tools like N8N or relay.app, and they are setting up these sort of a mix between workflows and agents, depending on what the implementation looks like, to do things for them and to start saying, okay, maybe I'm going to launch my business and I'm going to not hire a marketing team and a UX design team. I'm actually just going to set up agents to do all of this for me. And I think one of the blockers to doing that has been, one, the know-how of how to actually set that up. Like if you had to write that with code, there's only so many people that can do that. Or there are these tools like N8N where you can have a visual interface where you can set up the workflows, you put the steps in, you say then it's going to do this, but it's still quite technical. A really interesting advancement that we found someone posting about was the fact that using something like Claude, which is like ChatGPT from Anthropic, it now understands the language by which you interface with these drag and drop editors. So you can go and see someone posting about, hey, this is my N8N setup, and here's all of the things that talk to each other, and this is the steps that I've put in place, and this is the AI agent part of it. You can take a screenshot of that. You can put it into Claude. You say, I want to copy this workflow, but I want it to do this, this, and this. And so you just prompt it. and it will actually then generate the code to just drag and drop that back into the tool, the N8N, and then you've got this interactive workspace where you can just play around with it. And so it's rather than having to set this up manually, again, we're going back to prompting. Everything is just a prompt away, and which I think is going to become the new tagline. But really, this common theme of the barrier to setting these things up is getting lower. And to what I said before, the people who are just giving it a crack and going out there and trialing things and staying up to date with the news are going to advance so quickly beyond people who have been studying certain topics for many, many years. So that's the high level of AI workflows versus agents, and one of the common patterns that we're seeing. And that's my tool of the week.
Yep. And one thing to add to that, a personal experience over the last couple of weeks, I'm speaking to customers now myself, and in the luxury home building space, I wouldn't say we're the most technologically advanced industry in the world. Most people are always asking you in my space, like, what's different? What are your uniques? And you'll see on people's website, quality this and all that kind of stuff. And the more and more I think about it in our firm, what's really dividing us and the rest is our leveraging of technology and passing on that efficiency into back to the customer. And when you're dealing with really high values, you've got all these things that you can't control sometimes, like some cost inputs that everyone has to pay. But then the things that you are in control of is within your own operating costs, your own overhead, your own workflows. How do you optimize? How do you be efficient? And just opening up the customer to my back end, so some of the automations we built, how we run our business, how we leverage tools, really intelligent people will go, okay, that's the builder I want. I want the person thinking like that. And that's not just in building, that's in any company. And for instance, for me, the other way, going downstream with a consultant, I'm meeting with a lot of technology consultants, media consultants, finance consultants, because there's a lot of outsourcing going on. I think there's going to be a lot of outsourcing going on in the future. And one of them this week, I'll give them a plug, Desire Media, who actually for the pod as well, they volunteered to send someone over to China and follow me around for the tech tour next week. So they're going to be producing some great content for us there and following us around all the tech and AI hubs we go to in Shenzhen and Hong Kong and Guangzhou. Anyway, so when I was there going through like, how are we going to do this? He straight away said, do you want me to show you some of my back-end workflows I built out? And he was using N8N, and he was, and we both use Monday.com, and he uses Slack, and he was saying, I'll send you a presentation, click on it and approve it, and I'll show you what happens. And it just went through all these different automations. And now I didn't think, so then when you sent me that briefing document, it was from ChatGPT, like, you've taken a shortcut. Like, I thought some human was asking me all these questions. I was like, awesome. Like, great. I'm paying someone who's leveraging AI, which means I'm getting efficiency. Now, he's overhead is probably lower and they're probably making some more money. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. But I know that I'm not paying like slop money for old workflows and old thinking and inefficiency in a world where the word inflation, everything's been inflationary for like the last 20, 30 years. This is the first deflationary thing since software that we've seen, Industrial Revolution. And I just think, like you said, you don't have to be offering it as a product. You can just use it internally, and that becomes part of your sales pitch.
Yeah, totally. And nothing frustrates me more than when I'm paying a contractor and I feel like they're slotting in meetings or they're trying to prove that they're doing the hours to justify their worth. My thing is, if you could do something in half the time for me, I would actually consider paying you more because you're being efficient. And my time is worth a lot. So totally agree with you there. I think over time it is deflationary because these firms that are using AI, they will have better margins and people will realize that they have to use AI and the cost will come down a bit. And so therefore, if you're not being efficient and you're not implementing AI in your business, then you will get outpriced. But I totally agree. The mindset has to shift from I want to pay someone for their time to I want to pay for an outcome and then move on.
Especially, and that's where I think the models are going. So the pricing of these AI products, they're looking at the labor market and they're going to want to start charging you for outcomes, not per seat. So that'll be a really interesting play. I think it's so deflationary though, that even as they charge, what's going to happen is the cost of an outcome is going to decrease by 90%. And so therefore it's so deflationary and it's so hyper competitive that you're never going to be able to charge. It's not like OpenAI is not going to be able to go to us, we'll give you an agent for $25,000 a year because that's what, you would have paid employee 50 because someone will come and grab that from them and the moat will keep shrinking. So we're really in this enormous deflationary time. So for your service, what you do is you leverage all those tools, all the deflationary tools, and then optimize your service.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. That's sort of the moat.
Yeah.
Because your moat is your competitors who aren't doing that.
Yep. Totally. And it won't exist forever, but that's the opportunity now.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Robot rundown. Where the rubber meets the road in AI, also known as physical AI, not just robots. What's happening in my favorite space this week?
Well, in your favorite space and in your soon-to-be visited country that we talk about a lot, China, we have talked about the fact that China is probably a lot further ahead than people think that they are when it comes to robotics, when it comes to software and AI, even just infrastructure. They've built 1 million bridges over the last 30 years. I said that last time, but let that sink in. So China is doing things at a scale and a pace that I think most people are not aware of. And the most recent one that we saw was China completing 158 kilometers of road construction using AI and robots with no human labor involved. Zero. 158 kilometers of road. Speak about deflationary. Think about the cost savings there and think about what we could do in our country if we had that kind of technology and the leadership that would enable that. So I have no idea what robots they were using, who the company was behind it, if it was state-sponsored, probably, but it is really, really impressive to see them doing this. And it's also exciting because we don't have the infrastructure that we need and we don't have the houses that we need. And to see a country leading the way and doing these things autonomously without labor is very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100 miles of road completed without a human. That's unbelievable. I don't know the stats. I'm sure I could easily get it from Grok, but for instance, in like high-end construction, labor is about 60% of the cost of materials, or about 40. In road construction, I imagine it must be something similar. So if we're paying $1 billion per kilometre for a tunnel, I imagine for a road we would be at $100 million probably, or something similar, like, building the new Monash freeway in Melbourne or some freeway in Sydney. So per kilometre, we're probably paying $50 million of labour per kilometre. Now you times that by 100, 160, you've got some serious savings. And like we said, if we were to automate this and give people roads and then once again, so you've now automated the road so you can get the road out to the new suburb, you could be building the new suburb with, 3D printing and looking at construction more like manufacturing and bring down the cost of housing. You could be and building roads for cheaper. This is all abundance.
Yeah.
This is what it's all leading to. It's all leading to abundance.
And it's
if
not just
you
new.
adopt.
It's not just new. It's like, let's just rebuild all of our roads on repeat every 5 years, so we don't have these shitty old roads that we're constantly patching. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we could start to basically automate and just live in a much better world. Yeah, like you say, a more abundant world.
Now, you did go to an infrastructure conference or something, didn't you, during the week? Did you? Was this news slightly too late for you to blow that infrastructure conference up and say, where are the robots?
No, it was, I spoke at the Master Builders panel that was on infrastructure. The guy, his name is Jonathan Spear. Lovely guy. Didn't mention AI probably enough and robotics enough in his speech for me to really give him a standing ovation. But it's very clear, and no shade on anyone that was speaking. Actually, I will do a shout out to Lucinda. She had started a company called Neighborlytics that does big analytics for neighborhoods. Really cool company, and she did an amazing speech. And she was very forward thinking in what AI means for the world and the potential for abundance. But I think in general, Victoria and Australia are just not in the same headspace as where countries like China's leading the way. Even the US is a lot more forward thinking than we are here. And, to your point last week around it making every Australian a millionaire, we're just not considering that. And so to answer your question, no, this was not brought up at the panel. It wasn't even I don't think it was even a potential to be brought up. So we've got some work to do.
All right, well, maybe we're going to start a little Oz Tech tracker just to give a pulse on where this country is going in terms of its technology adoption, because we know at the end of it, once we get up to 10, that's automated Oz, and that's abundance Oz, and that's $1 million Aussies. So we might have a little tracker. And at the moment, I reckon we're at about 0.5.
Yeah.
So plenty of room for growth.
A long
and we'll just keep harping it on it here. Yeah, another one, I mean, in the space of automated roads and construction is Lumina out of San Francisco, startup doing electric autonomous excavators and bulldozers. So what's really interesting is that first US company to really get into the space. Companies like us are going to be looking at this because we see that as, the whole workflow is that. But one of the things when you're looking at automating construction, whether it's 3D printing or it's modular, none of it is really solving for the foundation. So the foundation of the building is still really being built in situ, what we call it, or on site, by conventional excavators and conventional concreting techniques. So automating that site establishment structure, things like autonomous excavators and autonomous, concrete pumps and things like that, they're going to be the future. So coming out of San Francisco, good to see the US doing something about it. They're obviously they're calling this like the AI arms race or the robotics arms race. I think what's really happened there is they've just realized how far behind they are. And they realize at this point it's, full of the Roman Empire type stuff, that these changing of the guards in terms of global powers doesn't usually happen without some kind of conflict. And it seems like this administration and in general, the US is saying, manufacturing and physical AI and robotics is actually the real play here, because the software, like DeepSeek, blew it up when DeepSeek just produced that model that was 80% as good for less than 10% of the cost. So they're jumping into the hardware. They're realizing they can automate factories now, and this Lumina, autonomous bulldozer, I think is a good start. My only question is it too little, too late? And is the cat out of the bag in terms of, and so all they can do then is be like China and ban Chinese robots. Like, how China banned some US software. Are the US, the most open capitalistic society in the world, are they going to start banning technology from other countries, like they've done with Huawei with 5G? So, and if they do that, once again, Australia, our little Switzerland play, for me, I want it all. I want the US software, I want the Chinese robots, and then I want to build houses for less. Like
I said, Scotty, I think we need to get you into a political position to negotiate that one, because I don't know if we're currently equipped with the right people to be able to do that. But I agree. It's I think the US really needs to build the capability themselves so that they do have that optionality. Because without it, then you're screwed. And that'll be the big question, whether they do have the smarts, the labor, the resources, and the political capital to actually go and invest very heavily in this space.
And I think another one where we talk about sort of international, almost trade and international cooperation. The remote worker phase has been around for a long time. We both use it in our businesses and for this podcast as well. But it's always been around being physically remote and adding some value from somewhere that might have a lower cost base due to the cost of living in that country compared to the cost of living where you're delivering your product or your business might be located. What's really interesting though is that the word remote is because they're not around and they're not performing any function in your physical environment. What's happening now with robotics and bandwidth probably and AI is that remote workers are entering the physical workspace. So we're now saying, for instance, you could control an excavator equipped with the right software and hardware. You could be in India, remote control, like playing a video game, controlling where that excavator is doing and what it's doing on site. Now, they would have to be equipped with all the cameras. We've heard that Waymo was being monitored by like thousands of drivers, potentially out of India as well, before they went autonomous. And there's actually some, theories that maybe there's still some back end
I think there is
oversight there.
Yeah. So this was 12 months ago when I was in San Francisco. My Waymo paused. It didn't know what to do. and then like it took about a minute, and then it got taken over, and I think a manual driver took over. So I'm sure that's getting less and less, but 100% that is I think that's still the case. They're all getting monitored such that if they get themselves into a situation where the AI doesn't know what to do, there is a human to step in.
Yeah, and we're now seeing it come into some really other interesting tasks. One was I think that the post on X just said we're screwed, and it was like a guy with a bunch of remote controls stacking a shelf, like getting paid out of India or China, and stacking a shelf in Tokyo with a Tokyo robot in like their Quickie Mart type thing. And then the other one was a surgeon in Rome literally operating on someone or something in another country through that VR type experience, but physically doing it. So physically moving their hands in one country, and physically something like surgery happening somewhere else. So it's not just about cheap labor, it's about scaling yourself globally in the digital world and the physical world, which is kind of mind-blowing.
It is. We talked about the metaverse, like Mark Zuckerberg's big thing was the metaverse, go live in the digital world. It's almost like the opposite now, like use the digital world to live in the physical world, just remotely, which is pretty crazy.
What's stopping me in 6 months? We're about to talk about, in the founder files coming up, which we'll get into in a second, or we could, let's even just jump into it now. So there's a little section where we want to share some of our insights of being founders and CEOs of startups, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And one of those things is scaling a company, starting a company is hard enough. Scaling it across your own city is difficult. Scaling it across your own country is epic, and barely any company can do it well. And then scaling globally is basically impossible. And then if you can, those who can, they end up being pretty well known, especially coming from Australia, where we're upside down in the worst time zone in the world for trying to communicate across the globe and things like that. So we might go to maybe our shared stories in that, but just like a thought experiment before we start to tag in the robot rundown is what is stopping me from having a camera on me and somehow being plugged into an Optimus style robot sitting in my office in Melbourne and then just controlling a joystick and walking around the Texas office, having a chat with people, being on premise. Scotty.inc just waltzing around the office.
I'm sure.
I just got like the Apple. I've got the Apple Vision Pro on it here.
I'm sure the Texas office will be absolutely stoked to know that anytime you have a great thought, you can just walk over to them via your Optimus, tap them on the shoulder.
Just says Scotty.
You might get unplugged.
That's a good point. I'll say, there's a power outage. It's like, apologies, your bot's stuck in a room in the broom closet. But I suppose that was just a thought experiment. It just made me think that personally, what is stopping stopping us from scaling ourselves physically overseas. But maybe if we move on from that thought, as it might be too scary for anyone that works with me. What insights have you got to share on your journey from startup locally in Melbourne, nationally, and now trying to make it overseas?
Yes, we've been on the journey of scaling to the US for the last 6 months. Firstly, it's really hard. But I guess the question is why? One, the obvious ones, time zones. Yeah, you only have a couple of hours crossover in the day, if at all, if you're working 9 to 5. And so you get this delay. Like anytime you have a question, you got to wait for them to come on, and everything gets delayed. And it's not just like your whole business gets delayed by 24 hours. The time to do anything is essentially doubled. So it's like almost exponential. So that's a really hard one. The cultural differences, we thought that we could just take an Australian culture over to the US, an Australian model. They work very differently over there. So it's you need to adapt to the culture that you're going into. You have no brand presence. So Built Past now, even though we're only a few years old, we've got a good brand presence now in Australia, becoming more of a household name in the construction industry. We don't have that in the US, and then just the momentum you lose by doing fly in, fly out. So I wasn't there for the first quarter of this year. We had another team member managing the US team. For the last couple of months, I've been doing fly in, fly out, and it's helpful to be over there for a couple of weeks. But you come back here and you lose that momentum, the people you were chatting to, the decisions that you were making, that flywheel that you you need to get going in a startup. It kind of just comes to a bit of a halt, or at least it doesn't get faster. And so that's probably the most difficult part of it all. And hence why we're actually, I'm going to be moving, which is really exciting. So I'll be moving over there in July, sort of indefinitely to lead the US team, just because of that. It's just hard to do remotely, especially if you were doing it, from Canada to the US. Sure, that'd be, you could probably do that. But Australia to the US, other sides of the globe, it's near on impossible. And all of our investors told me this. I was too stubborn to listen and had other things going on in my life. But now I'm listening and hoping that we're going to see some success over there.
Wow, huge news, breaking news on the pod. So thank you for that. I hope that's awesome. And look, and I think the one thing that you've had to do though to do that is you've had to build a an Australian operation that is pretty self-sufficient. And for a business that's 3 years old, like, what was the step or what was the moment, apart from the needing to go to the US, when did you feel like you're actually going to be comfortable leaving the Australian team to operate without you?
Yeah, it's probably two things. It's good systems and processes and knowing that they're working, and having the right people in the right places. So as soon as you install someone and then over a period of time, you can trust them to do the job really well, that takes something off your plate and you can move on to the next thing. And the more that you reduce the surface area by which you need to be involved in that decision or actually physically helping with something, the more confidence you can have to step away. So I would say it's never too early to have good systems and processes. You've got to get the right people into the business. And, every business is driven by revenue and growth there. And so for us, it was working out how do we get a scalable revenue engine. And we didn't have that in the first 2 years because it was all just me doing the sales. But as soon as we figured out that if we hire this many sales reps, they make this many calls, they book this many demos, it's going to convert to this much revenue. Or if we put this much money into meta ads, it's going to convert into this much revenue. We now have a model. It's a bit of a playbook. We need to adapt it over time, obviously. But that is sitting there and there's still lots of work to do. But we know that that's going to work. And so I'm lucky to have a business partner as well who will be managing the Aussie team. And but yeah, I think they're the two key things that you need to get right. Good systems and good people.
Wow, that's very cool. And look, I suppose our news on the back of that is we're going to have a physical presence in the US by the end of the year.
Amazing.
So we're probably 6 to 12 months behind yourself in that scenario. And then I get to live out, because you should never take someone's advice. I get to live out like you did, the bit where I have all the pain points and 6 months later might be shacking up.
Yeah. Well,
next to the parents,
you'll have a desk at our Austin office. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, mate. Well, but no, look, same thing. I just think it's it's never the right time. It's never the right time to make that big hire because the investment's too big and the business isn't ready. It's never the right time to even start the business because you've got all these costs at home. It's never the right time to expand nationally. It's never the right time to expand internationally. And it's never the right time to just go all in and just move over. So I think there's a bravery aspect to it all. And all the wins are on the other side of discomfort and risk. So I think a lot of the richest men and women around the world and best business people all talk about we over calculate for risk and we under calculate for opportunity. It's just a bit of a human trait because we're trying to survive. And I think if you can just sort of put all those doubts to bed and just go and do and take a risk. Even if you fail, like we spoke about last week, it's just another bit of data in your life, right? Like you went and trialed something and it didn't work. You get some more data, you can go again. So I just think, hats off to you for going all in. Very excited for you and the team. yeah, that's really exciting. So sounds like we're about 6 to 12 months behind you. So setting the bar for us to chase.
That's awesome, Scotty. We would love to have you over there. Not that it's my country to welcome you to, but I would love to have you over there.
I also love the free business, proprietary limited type LLC visa advice I get from you like 3 months after you do everything.
Yeah,
you're just running you as my guinea pig.
Exactly. I'll make all the mistakes and you can learn from them.
Just come in and clean up.
Yeah.
Mate, to finish off, a bit of a closing thoughts. We absolutely need a better name for it, but every week we try and get a bit philosophical with basically wrapping up all this tech talk into a bit more of a human layer and some takeaways as well. On what are we doing here, and also potentially on the monitor coming in now, there might be some breaking news out of OpenAI. So we might finish with OpenAI news, but for now, we'll just jump into like some of the philosophy of what we're doing. The Anthropic CEO said something over the last couple of weeks about 20 to 50% of white collar jobs are in danger over the next 5 or 6 years. And then the New York Times and everyone ran with it with this big AI fear sort of campaign. I had it shared with me like 10 times. And for those that really aren't tuned into this, that can be a scary headline. But I sort of wanted to go the other direction with it around, from a CEO's point of view or a founder's point of view, but then also from an employee's point of view, a young person coming out of university, and just think that all that's happening right now is what you would call the middle class of the workforce, I think, is going to get gutted. And it's going to be a world of the haves and the have-nots. But as opposed to the economy, where you might have been dealt a rough card in where you grew up or what education you were given, with all these tools, most of these tools have a free option. So no matter where you've come from, no matter what education you have a chance to level up yourself. Like we're talking about getting rid of universities basically at the moment and leveraging some tools and teaching yourself any skill or basically leveling up yourself. You can do it weekly or daily. And I think as a business owner, you should be thinking about how are we optimizing, who are the real performers at work, and how am I incentivizing them so they're completely aligned with the company vision. And if that ends up leaning out your workforce, that's okay, because that's the future. The future is paying for excellence, leveraging that excellence and delivering that to a customer, because everyone's going to start getting really picky when they go to spend their money, because there's going to be so many options. And then I think as a staff member, an employee, or a young person coming out of university, we've talked about leveraging tools and then leveraging your employer. And I think that is true. You see Nvidia doing it. They've got 30,000 employees pushing in the same direction, generating $6 million Australian of revenue per employee, $1 million of EBIT profit per employee. Tell me they're not sharing that with those staff members. Tell me they're not. Basically, every Nvidia employee will probably be a millionaire now. So I think sort of for me, I'm going the opposite way. I'm saying if you look at life like I'm happy to work a dead-end job that makes me miserable, that I don't care about, that's probably going to, well, hopefully we create enough abundance in Australia for you to get paid to do something that does make you happy. But if you want to be excellent, all the tools are there, and I think you're going to level up and you're going to be able to double your output and then potentially double your earnings at work. So I think it's really, you can look at it either way. For me, anyone who wants to be great, you can start from zero, but you've got the opportunity that you never would have had a couple of years ago. You've got the opportunity to reach for the stars and actually achieve it.
I love it. It would have been an awesome place to close, Scotty, but rudely, Mr. Altman from OpenAI has jumped in, as he always does, with a bit of news. So coming to you live from Sam Altman's X posts, Codex now gets access to the internet. So OpenAI's coding platform, like the equivalent of Lovable or Cursor, can now go and access the internet. And what does that actually mean? Rather than just having access to the model, while it's coding, it could be out there getting live information, checking websites. He has said that there are complex trade-offs, so people should read about the risk carefully and use it when it makes sense. So that's going to be made available to anyone in ChatGPT Plus. And also, in a bit of an FU to Scotty's growing subscription bill with AI products, they're going to be making a lightweight version of the memory that's available. So that's where OpenAI remembers everything about you. That will be available in the free tier of ChatGPT as well. So another reason just to potentially cancel that expensive $200 a month that we're both paying.
No. I'm going to bring it back to my philosophical ending, is that Sam has just given release news during this pod reflecting what I just said, which is now on the free tier of OpenAI. It's now giving you the memory. So everything that you've ever prompted, everything you've now done, you've now got this thought partner and this learning partner for free to level up at work and provide more value, and then get yourself incentivized and a bigger part of every business that you work for. So thanks, Sam, for always breaking news while we're on the pod. And but we've still managed to bring it back around to, he's basically empowered the everyday person who doesn't even want to spend any money to level themselves up on a daily basis.
Amazing. Let's wrap it there. I'm 15 minutes late to a meeting. This has been great. Thanks for the philosophical endings as always. I think that's something that's going to get a standing position in the B2S pod. So thanks, Scotty. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Pez Limited.
See you, Scotty.inc.